all the way bowed down. Here it goes, pinned down by the tree. Perfectly stuck between this other tree. Here is the rest of where it comes through the tree. Right here you can see the whole structure. And then look at the trail going right down there.
Big Sky howdy, and welcome to another exciting episode of World Bigfoot Radio. And with us, we've got longtime researcher William Lunsford, who hails from down in Texarkana and has been down in that part of the country running around collecting Bigfoot evidence to share with us for decades now. And I'm sure we'll have him back numerous times, but this will be the first time he's been on the show. And let's get right to it. Welcome to the show, William Lunsford.
Dude, thank you so much, man. I've been so excited about this ever since we've talked about it. And like I said, it's certainly one of the highlights of my career. I know the kind of audience that you reach, and I know the people that you do reach are serious about Bigfooting and squatching. And hopefully we can discuss some things and tell some stories that they might find interesting that'll maybe help them, find their next squatch or sighting. But, but also the ones that don't, help them realize this is a real animal. It's not something that's made up or something that people just talk about during campfire stories.
No, they're super smart and they're elusive, and they figure out your ploys and how to get around them very, very swiftly, like usually the first time. But the fact of the matter is that they're still flesh and blood, and you can pattern them. There's things you can figure out about what they do and don't generally do, and where you will be likely to find them and where you will not be likely to find them. So, armed with that sort of information, it gives you a lot greater chance of being able to find evidence of them, or being able to see one. Not that I'm advocating that you go out and go run around the woods looking for Bigfoot. If you want to, go ahead, but just know that there are risks involved. And
there are risks.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm playing on house money now, as many as I've been fortunate enough to see, and so I've only had one that's been aggressive. So, but there's things that you can pattern even with, I do a lot of tree structure work, and you can even pattern the same animal by the structures that he builds around his area there.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, that these supposedly imaginary animals make these same sorts of tree structures not only all over the continent, but all over the world where these things are, because there's researchers over in Siberia that are finding the same kind of structures that we're finding over here. I got, people over in Europe that are finding the same kinds of structures that we're finding over here. I don't know about the Yowie researchers. I haven't seen their tree structures yet. They're probably finding the same thing. So again, and there seems to be like a definite certain ones that they make. I mean, there's some random stuff that they just throw together, but things that are fairly universal. Tree snaps, twist snaps, arches, X structures, asterisk structures. You find those everywhere.
I have found those in 5 different states that I live in around here. And like I said, and there's a commonness to a lot of them, but then you get an individual creature and he'll tend to add his own little tinge to the artwork. And like I said, you can see which one it is. And having done that in those 5 states, and that's what I find amazing. I actually went 6 states. I'm sorry. I went to Alaska last year and found some. Alaska was according to the the GPS 4,600 miles from my house, and I found some of the same things that I found here where I live here in Texarkana, which is a twin city that's right on the border between Texas and Arkansas, and 20 miles from the Fouke monster.
Yeah. So Momo is making the same kind of structures that the hairy man up in Alaska are making, and they're making the same kind of structures that the Wendigo up in the Northeast is making, and that Hostian is making over in New Mexico. They're all making the same kind of structures.
And what's really great is the intelligence design, and it's not just something, as you said, randomly thrown together. They put so much into it, and it's some of it is worthy to be in an art museum because it is so beautifully done. And I try to take pictures. I've actually come upon several, had the good fortune that they're in the process of being built on a daily basis. And so we will go, I'll have them take my wife with me, and we'll take pictures at the same time every day from the same place. And we'll take 10 pictures, one every minute for 10 minutes to allow for, the difference in the earth or tilting or whatever it is right there. And you can see for sure that they're adding things to this. And it's one of the craziest things that you've ever seen. And whenever they finally get done, it's a truly a work of art.
Yeah, we have a couple places that we go to up to periodically because we know they like to make structures there, and it's interesting to watch how they change them. Some of them get completely taken down, dismantled, and turned into something else, or some of them have parts added to them or taken away from them. Some of them, it's like they make it and then that's it. It's perfect. You never touch it again. It just
one thing around here, it seems like if you get another more dominant male or more dominant creature, he will actually tear down the structures from the other creatures and build his own. And we found that probably 10 to 15 times here within the last couple of years. I mean, beautiful structures, and all of a sudden they're gone. Then you find a whole totally different pattern in the way that the creature works. So I don't know, like I said, if it's a dominance thing or whether he's trying to attract females or whether he's just like, this is my territory. You've moved, take your artwork with you.
Right. Now, the other thing is I get this question a lot from people. Well, how can you tell just deadfall or, storm damage from tree structures? And, well, there's a whole bunch of things that you can look at. With tree snaps, one dead giveaway is if it's twisted. Generally, when something breaks something off, it doesn't twist it. It takes you actually holding onto the object and breaking it at the same time, which means you have to be able to grasp onto it, which requires hands. Moose or something like that breaks off a piece of a tree branch or something like that, you won't see that kind of a twist on it. And the other thing is with the Bigfoot twist snaps, they seem to do habitually, and they like to do for trail markers a lot. You find them generally between 6 and 9 feet up, which is sort of a peculiar place for a tree to break, if you think about it. If it's old and rotten, it should break off nearer the stump.
That's right.
If it's something hanging off the top of it, it would snap off further up.
And you can tell because the break is so abrupt in such a short area, like so much power has been displayed right here to twist this limb or whatever. And as I said, we don't really know what the reason is, but the amount of power that you can see, as you said, it's been twisted, and rarely is it ever broken. Sometimes it is, but you can tell. And then there's going to be times. Sometimes that you might have something that might fool you, but as a rule, you can tell the difference between something that has live intent, the way it's twisted, and the way a tree is just broken. As you said, it'll break more towards the ground. They generally don't break at 9 to 10 feet up there.
No, that's peculiar. Unless something from higher up has fallen on them, and then it'll be laying on the ground, so it's easy to tell that. Another thing that I get all the time, and you could back me up and jump in on any of this anywhere you want, William.
Okay.
I just thought it'd be a good thing to cover because we got, what the hell you're talking about here, and I get these questions a lot, so let's both tackle them.
I appreciate that.
The next one that comes up a lot is arches. Well, sometimes arches are caused by the plant being diseased, gets sick, it wilts over dead. Another time is like storm damage can cause this, and snow load can definitely cause it. If you get a heavy ice storm or something, and it's got a lot of branches and stuff up toward the top of it, but it's not very thick in diameter, all that extra weight can make it bend over, and that can cause, that bending action. Well, how can you be sure that that's not natural and a Bigfoot did it? Well, there's two different ways that you can tell. One is if it's pinned down. If something has actually laid something heavy across the top of this thing to hold that arch in place so it doesn't spring back into position. You look closely at how did it get underneath there? Did this thing just fall across it and clip it as it was coming down and land with the top pinned underneath it. If that's not an option, then something bent it over and put this heavy object on it to hold it in place. And the other one that you find is where something literally took the top of the tree and jammed it into the ground to hold it into that arched position. Neither of those things happen naturally.
That's exactly right. I went out today into the woods, as a matter of fact, and found just what you are talking about. I found one that had been bowed over, and it was probably a 40-foot tree. Wasn't probably as big around, but as your calf, as far as that goes, but it should have been growing straight. It was bowed over, and the end had kind of a Y to it. The Y was placed on each side of this other tree, and then about another 30-foot limb was placed between the Y of this tree to hold the thing down like that. And then probably 20 to 30 feet after that, just like you say, there was one that I found that was probably, the arch was probably totally 8 feet off the ground where it actually bent, but the end was jabbed into it for about a foot, jabbed into the ground. So it's really, when you look at it, and you can see that there's no way that occurs naturally. And as I said, whatever it means to us, we look at it and we marvel, but it means something to them. We still don't know enough about them yet to know what it is, but it's something that we find as a commonality all over the United States.
Absolutely. Let's talk about another one. X structures. You find X structures all over the damn place. Asterisks, things like this. The first telltale sign that it's not natural is, especially if it's a little bit smaller, go over and pull it out of the ground. Does it come out of the ground? If it doesn't come out of the ground, it's rooted there. It might just be natural. It could be a couple natural things that just leaned over and it looks like it's something even though it isn't. Okay. Has it been pushed over? Are the roots protruding up out of the ground on one side and it's literally been pushed over somehow? Well, then maybe something pushed it over. It could just have been, part of the ground subsided and it got too wet and it fell over and there was too much weight on one side or something. So that's not for sure. But here's the thing that we find with X structures that we're sure are made by biggies. Generally 3 things. First of all, they're not from there. Neither of the 2 pieces is from there. It was moved in from somewhere else, which, obviously, that ain't natural. The second thing is that both of them will tend to be the same diameter and the same length. And the third thing is that generally all the bark and the branches will be stripped off of them, too. And if you got all those three things going, you can just about guarantee it's either a human or a Bigfoot, and probably a Bigfoot that made it.
And you'll also find that the roots will be planted towards the sky rather than on the ground. They have a penchant to take those roots and to put them towards the sky, where the butt end that should be on the ground is up in the air and the other one is down. We find so much, as you just said, where the limbs are totally stripped down through here, and it's not even dependent on the size of the limb that it's used or the tree that it's used. They'll strip that limb for whatever reason, and as you said, sometimes they're stuck in, but it's truly a thing. I have found some where the actual X part, where it actually crossed, were 12 and 13 foot high with some big animals. With some big limbs. I used to be a power lifter, and I couldn't even move them hardly with my hands without getting under there to squat. But yet here they are, and they're handled just like they're playing with either or pixie sticks or tinker toys. And so when you find those right there, again, whether it is a display of power, whether it's a display of dominance, whether it's simply saying stay out, or as a marker for another Bigfoot, when you find it, there's no doubt about it, and you really appreciate the strength as for what that these creatures have.
Yeah. The other thing is that now up here we find such gigantic stuff that it's almost frightening. And 2 examples that I can give you guys of things that weren't moved into place. And now this one is more, it's really hard to vet something like this. In these 2 cases, we're damn sure, as a matter of fact, in both of them, that it was Bigfoot involved. And one of them is a teepee structure with 7 trees forming the top of the teepee. The top of the teepee is up at about 25 feet. All of them are alive. All of them were the same diameter. They were all shoved into position. The tops were intertwined. And you can look at this. I don't care how many meteorologists and microburst experts you get to look at this. There ain't no way in hell it's natural. So this is so obviously a dead giveaway. Plus, there were tons of other signs around there and tracks that we found right close to there of things being moved around and, obvious Bigfoot tracks and stuff to tell us that, yes, this tremendous teepee-looking thing isn't natural. Look at the way the tops are woven together. Another example of that was the 6-story tall X structure we found. Both ends of the tree were actually still rooted in the ground. They were uprooted on the outside because they had been pushed over. And they were both the same diameter and the same distance apart from this tree in the middle, that they'd both come together right in this little arch in it, mysteriously enough, to form this perfect X that happened to be 6 stories tall. So was that Bigfoot? Well, there's, who knows what the hell made it. It doesn't look natural. It's an incredibly low probability that it would be. And then right behind it, there's this whole tree that's butt end up in the air, like you were just talking about, that's not from there. There wasn't even a stump there. And it's a whole damn tree. Okay? So this is another sign that this thing probably is not natural. So a lot of this stuff, you have to kind of look at the area around it and just go, well, is this coincidental, or is there any other evidence around here that there's Bigfoot activity in the area? And you start seeing one giant structure like this, and then there's this other peculiar thing behind it. I might note when Kevin was up there, he was in an area where he just did a 360 spin, and he must have caught like 15 structures, different sizes, including an arch that was 20 feet high. And the opposite direction from there, he was looking at an X structure that was probably 30 feet, and both ends of it were upside down. The root balls were up in the air.
Another thing around here that we find that on the teepee structures, that they tend to have one limb that's suspended. It will be suspended off the ground. And also around here, they tend to have a penchant to have at least one. If they can find a burned limb or a burned tree, that burned tree will be placed in that structure somewhere. So it's really one of those things that when you see that it's actually done. Like you said, the tops are generally woven, or even sometimes quote tied unquote together when you've got this creature in there. So he is, and they're very good housekeepers. They know what they want in the area and what they don't. So you find these teepee structures, and I have found teepee structures as high as 35 foot tall. And man, it's just, when you look at it, you realize that you're looking at something that man doesn't have. I don't have the power to do it. Like I said, I could military at one time, military press over 550 pounds over my head. I couldn't do it. And so I know for sure that, like I said, it's not done by somebody else who's just a random Joe. Not that I'm anything special, but the fact that that was something that couldn't be done. My son was also a 400-pound bench presser at 17 years old. We would both have to get under there and use our shoulders and legs to try to even move some of these things around. So, but the TP structures are just incredible, and like I said, they're more common than what people realize. But there's something that they have in there that means to them. I've actually watched them be built, as I said earlier, by taking the different pictures and stuff. And whenever it's through, it's one of the most incredible things that you've ever seen.
Yep. So how long actually have you been involved in Bigfoot, and how did you get involved with it to start with?
Well, man, my story is one of those that I live here in Texarkana. Texarkana is one of the true twin cities of the United States. Like I said, a street called State Line, one half's in Arkansas, one half is in Texas. It's also about 30 miles from the Louisiana border. But I was here. There was a creature back in 1971 called the Fouke monster that made national headlines. And it crossed the road in front of some people at first, and then it started reaching its hand through somebody's house. And so it was picked up by the local news, and then it was picked up by the national news. But I thought the stories were too far-fetched. I just didn't believe in them. We even drove down to Fouke at the time that it was coming along there, and so there was always a long line of traffic and things like that. So I just didn't pay much attention. But I spent a lot of time. I grew up very near Fouke, Arkansas. And places I hunted and fished were just right there on the outskirts. So there's one place I had fished with my dad ever since I was probably 3 years old, and I was 17 in 1977. And I was going down through these gravel pits, and as I was going down there, I was all excited to get there. And I had gotten out of school early. I was a teacher's aide for a coach who had let me go early, so I'm down there getting ready to go fishing. And as I do, I'm walking down this gas line, and I notice there's a stink that is not there before, but being all the gravel pits that there was, it wasn't strange that, you would have dead animals or dead fish, and you would see them laying along the edge there and stuff. But there was nothing else that was any different. But the further down the gas line I went, the more the stench got. So I came to one place there right at twilight in the afternoon there, right about the time the sun was setting behind the horizon there. And I had 2 or 3 more pits I wanted to fish. And like I said, we have a lot of poisonous snakes. That's one reason I want to get that done before it got dark. So I'm walking down this one place. I start to cross this gas line, and for some reason I stop. I noticed how strong the smell was. And that was, like I said, that was not something that I had been used to, even among the roadkill and all the different animals. So I'm looking down this road, and I noticed that there's something over there that's a little bit different than had not been there before. I said, I've been there hundreds and hundreds of times with my dad. You know, it was not anything, but there was something that made me stop. Well, I'm looking down this road. I want to go to walk. I want to get down there and get it done and come back. But like I said, there's one thing down there. It's just almost, quote, too shadowy. It's too dark. Well, finally, I said, well, your imagination's running wild with you. So I started to cross the gas line. Well, as it was about 3 weeks before this, I had been down there, and I had something following me through the woods as I was going back to my vehicle. And I didn't think a whole lot about it at first, but I would sit there and I would stop, and it would take an extra step or two, and it would stop. Well, I did the same thing again. I would stop. It would take an extra step or two. It would stop. Well, I realized then that I was truly being shadowed, so I kind of picked up my pace a little bit, and you could hear it coming through the woods. So then I got really scared. I realized it wasn't a panther. It wasn't a coyote, and whatever it was big. Well, of course, naturally, if you don't, I'm thinking bear because we have bears. So I'm running down this gas line trying to get to my truck. About the time that I get into the patch of the woods where I have to go to take my trail, the thing screams at me. So I'm thinking, oh man, that's that kind of deal. I said, I don't believe in Bigfoot. I don't know anything really about it. The Fouke monster, I didn't believe in that, but I'm thinking, okay, that's either a panther or bear. So I got to my vehicle. I went to the store and bought me a Bowie knife and put that in my tackle box. And I figured, when you're 17 and 6'2", 240 and fixing to play college football, you think you can handle anything. Well, you can't. So as I said, I put that in there, and then 3 weeks later, I'm back to the same old spot. Well, as I'm crossing this gas line, I just happened to look, and I'm noticing this one dark shape on the side. Well, as I sit there and stare, finally this thing pulls up, and it's on the side of the road, on the left-hand side of the road. And it has leaves pulled down in front of its face, or a limb pulled down in front of its face, and it starts to stand up. And as it does, it raises the limb with it. And then it continues to stand and it didn't stop at 5 foot, and it didn't stop at 6 foot, and it didn't stop at 7 foot. It was between 7.5 and 8 foot tall. I said, I'm thinking, oh man, that's a bear. But because it wasn't within me to pigeonhole the fact that there could actually be a Fouke monster, even though I live close by. Well, the thing sits there and it turns loose of the limb, and it walks out in the middle of the road, and it starts teetering from side to side and just looking at me. And his eyes were so black, it was like coals. And man, I wanted to run as fast as I could, and I could not move. And I'm sitting there, and of course I'm trying to be thinking about it and thinking, man, if I do run, is that going to trigger the predator instinct? But if I really, like I said, I wanted to and just couldn't. So he sits there and we have a little staring contest, and he walks back to the same limb. He pulls it down, he puts it in his mouth, kind of like what we call skin the cat, and he skins all the leaves, and then he turns it loose and walks back in the middle of the road. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm dead, and this is how I'm going to die. And, I remember thinking, man, just, Lord, take care of my mom, after this happens, and let him find my body. Well, he sits there and we stare again. He's almost like saying, don't come down here. This is my territory. And it was almost like he could read my thoughts, but I'm not saying that he could. I'm just saying just the way he looked at me and studied me as intently as I was him. Then he made one move like he was going to come forward, and he wheeled on his left leg, and he stepped into the woods in 2 steps. He made that 3rd step, and I could hear him, and then I couldn't hear him. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. And I realized that I'm crying. I realized I'm hyperventilating. And finally, my senses come to me, and whenever I've been there probably 20 to 30 seconds, like, well, if you're going to run, this is your time. And I used to be a miler at the high school, so I took off like I was running my mile. And I ran back. I was about 1.25 miles to 1.5 miles from my truck, my truck, actually my Datsun B210. I called it my truck. I had a bumper sticker that said, when I grow up, I'd like to be a truck. So it was one of those things, but I ran back. I mean, it was like, when you're a poor kid, that's all you can do, So I run back, and I jump a creek. I jump a 20-foot creek like a steeplechaser, run up the side of a hill, and I run across the field. I get to my vehicle. I throw my tackle box and rod and reel over the gate, dive through, and got my keys. I get in there, and I get ready to leave, and I realize my rod and reel is still outside. So I looked around, and man, like I said, I was poor, so I just pulled up a little bit further, got my rod and reel, threw it in the pasture side, and I took off. I come home and tell my mom about it, and she knows something's wrong, and she goes, well, son, I believe you, but I don't believe I tell a whole lot of people. I'm like, well, so I told, being a knucklehead, I went ahead and told some people, and they laughed like crazy, and they said, well, that wasn't Bigfoot. That was your ex-girlfriend, or, that's the same place, that I saw the Easter bunny last year, or how long did it take you to sober up? And as I said, I'm a teetotaler. Yeah, really. The world's full of comedians, and it really hurt my feelings because people that I expected would believe me, they believe me, but they're classic line, and I know you've heard it too. Well, I know you saw something, or I know you thought you saw something, but it wasn't the Fouke monster. Well, I knew it was. So I just shut up telling people for a long, long time. And finally, about 4 years later, like, I got married, and I told my wife's family about it. And coincidentally, the lady across the street from them had one walking down the side of their fence line, and she was hosting a garden party. And so she was keeping everybody's attention on her. Well, then about 4 years after that, I'm down at this place called Mercer Bayou. It's world famous, known for Bigfoot. And there's a bunch of dead fish that are on the parking lot, and you can smell them. And I had a new motor, so I didn't know how long it would take me to get back from fishing. Well, I was about 30 minutes late, and I had my 8-year-old nephew with me. And so I pull it as we pull in there back to the boat ramp there, you can tell that some of the fish had gone. Didn't know if it was because the sun, he quit shining on, making them stink, or whether they'd been eaten. But sure enough, I go down, I pull my boat trailer down there, I put the boat on, and I get ready to tie it down. And right as I get ready to tie it down, the thing is over in the corner of the parking lot, and it kind of stands up and just, just like you've interrupted my meal. But it was so scary because I had my little nephew with me. And I told him, I said, get in the truck. He goes, what was that? I said, get in the truck. Well, I said, get in the truck. So he gets in the truck. I don't even tie my boat down. I drive up about a mile up there to a main public highway before I could tie my boat down, and I leave. So after that, I know that my territory and the thing's territory are the same. I just had to know that I had to sit there and figure out what it was so I wouldn't have any more sightings again. Of course, after my first sighting, I went to the library. I read everything I could. I watched every show on it that I could, but there just wasn't a whole lot available so that you could learn very much of it. But then after a while on things like that, I began to learn, and I began to realize, and I'd talk to people and see that they would have some of the same kind of encounters. And it was just too coincidental in all the things that they told me that were so similar to what had happened to me. So I became a researcher, and not by choice, but just more or less to prove that I wasn't crazy, and to realize that these animals, what I had seen was I don't call it paranormal. It was just something that the world just wouldn't believe unless they see it themselves. So I started studying, and started finding more and more stuff. And of course, where I live, I'm very fortunate to have Sulphur River, have the Fouke monster, or Southern Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, whether it's skunk ape, have down here in my area. So as I studied and studied more, I became a UPS driver. I would pick up stories from different people that would be 50 and 60 miles away. And I thought, well, man, this is only in my neck of the woods this is happening. But sure enough, I find that this is happening, north, south, east, and west. So then it really got on me, and I haven't been able to put it down since, Duke. It's really, and I've had so many great experiences. I've been very fortunate to have some great experiences. I've been very lucky so far. I've only had one experience that has been where the animal is aggressive. The rest has been just a mutual passing, or they'll scream and they'll let you know whenever they're not happy. I've had one throw an 8-foot limb at me to get me out of his territory. But after that right there, and I researched, now I'm retired and I get to research just about every day. But I've been doing this since 1977. So I've got about 42 years involved in it.
That's quite a while. Yeah, that's, yeah. That's quite a while. Well, I didn't actually start paying that much attention to it until, probably the same year that you had your sighting. That's when I had my second one. So, yeah, probably about the same amount of time that you've been at it.
And I'm not ready to put it down. I try to, and you just can't. It's like an itch that you can't scratch, because something different will happen. And man, you're hooked all over again. And then you'll see something different. You'll pick up another story. And I've had a book written now for about 3 years. And every time I get ready to close it out, somebody will call and say, you still doing Bigfoot? And yeah, well, let me tell you what happened. And I'll pick up that story. And I'll go through and edit my book a little bit, and then add that to it, then get ready. Then sure enough, here will come another story that I think is worthy of sharing with somebody else, And so in doing that right there, so hopefully I'll have it ready for production. I'm trying to add some pictures to it now. So hopefully I'll have it ready to be published pretty soon. And I hope some folks will find it interesting. because everything I've got in here is stuff that's happened to me. It's not just what you read in a textbook, but stuff that's happened to me. People I've interviewed almost 150 people on my UPS route, and that have had things happen to them that, just all of a sudden they'll share the stories. It's almost like they've got to get it off their chest, almost like a support group. So as I said, I'm not planning on quitting anytime soon, and but I still love it as much today, even more so today, because I've had the kind of experiences I've had. We've had a year. This year, Duke, has been my best year ever. I've actually seen 7 creatures this year, and I have a picture of a mother walking, a mama Bigfoot walking with a baby on her shoulder. I have a picture of one that actually appears to have horns starting to grow out of the side of his head. There's an animal called the Ozark howler that lives close to where I'm at, and they say he has horns, and he has a very strange footprint. Then I have one that looks to appear like a dog man. I have seen a baby. The new ones that we have found this year, I've seen they don't have very much hair on their face and actually have more of a smaller type snout than the ones in Fouke do, which are just regular apes or regular gorillas. So I'm having to relearn everything that I've learned again that I thought I knew, and I'm finding out that there's different species right here within 60 miles of where I live. And so that's really neat to find too, as well. So like I said, I've been very fortunate. I had one run in front of my truck, stand there and look at me and take off. Took my wife down there with me to cast a footprint, and she's looking with binoculars, and she turns to look around. This thing's behind a brush pile. He stands up and puts his hand on the side of his head, almost like he's imitating her. And then I hollered too loud. I said, "Cindy, there he is." And of course, when I did that, he went down, and then she was still trying to find him in the binoculars. She didn't get to see him, but I did. So it's been, like I said, been very fortunate to see the things I've found. I've found a lot of tracks. I've probably found 70 to 80 tracks. We have a place there that some people disagree, but we have what we call a gifting stump. And we leave this animal, we leave him marbles, we leave him Legos, we leave every now and then, we'll leave a candy bar and hide it underneath a rock. And we've got a camera set above it. And so we'll find, and we've got 1 or 2 pictures of him at the stump there, the gifting stump, with his back to us, sitting there, rearranging the things on the stump. We've been putting out peanut butter, me and my partner, Stephen Hill, and we bury the peanut butter jar. They pick up the peanut butter jar, they take it off. It's gone for 2 or 3 weeks, and we leave it there. We come back 2 or 3 weeks later, and there will either be the lid or will be the wrapper, almost like he's saying, bring more peanut butter. We bring more peanut butter. Within 2 days, it's gone. It's been really crazy, but that's the honest truth. And Stephen went down last week and actually started that again, and sure enough, it wasn't 2 days, and the peanut butter jar was gone again. So I'm anxious to see how that plays out too. I think it's probably a juvenile based on the tracks that we have, but that's really interesting because I've never had that much interaction with this creature, and one of them actually follows me after I get through going down to bait it. Some of the pictures that I have, hopefully you have right there, there's one where there's 2 footprints, and then right in the middle of that is a Bigfoot footprint. Well, it was a rainy day. I had gotten out, went to bait up our stuff and left. Well, then the next day, Stephen calls me and he says, "Man, have you been up?" We call it ground zero. "You been up at ground zero?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Look who came to pay you a visit." And you can see my 2 tracks that are kind of pigeon-toed out there like that. But you can see the Bigfoot track, probably 16 and a half, 17-inch track, right there where I'd gone to bait the place that we're baiting up. And then I had another one probably 2 months after that. And on Mother's Day weekend, and I crawled over the gate and went to go bait these up. I came back. He was there 15 minutes later. He said, "You been up here at ground zero?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Look who else came to see you." So I've got an 80-yard track line following me there. So it kind of makes me nervous that they either recognize my truck or they recognize me. But then, it also gives me some hope that, maybe that should I have the face-to-face encounter, it's not going to end in a bad way and rather in a good way. But they do recognize my vehicle. I promise you. I do a hoot owl call or a barred owl call. And Stephen came out one night and he said, "Are you up here at ground zero?" And I said, "No, I'm not." He goes, "I just heard your owl call." And he said, "It's to a T." So evidently, and that's how when I get up there to the place, I generally announce to them that I'm there, with a good old barred owl call. And so we've had that happen. So it's been really interesting this year to have those kind of things happen. And we've been getting stuff here around the Fouke area again since August, since the last week in August. Not long ago, I found an alligator track that was coming out of Mercer Bayou there, and the bayou was really far down. They've drained it, and of course, with it being so hot, but I'm following the Bigfoot tracks first. Well, then I see these alligator tracks, and also with the tail drag, I followed the Bigfoot tracks, and all of a sudden the alligator tracks disappear, but the Bigfoot tracks don't. And so I think he probably has had him a meal of Arkansas alligator down there. I've sent you a picture, I think, there of a gator skeleton that I found one down here around where I'm at right now. We've had this gator for 3.5 years in the same place. One day, me and my son go down there, and there's a trail through the grass crossing this little creek where this thing lives. And I was messing with him. I said, yeah, I said, Bigfoot done went and got that gator. 2 days later, we find that alligator skeleton and the scutes right there, just right across from where this gator had a gator slide, had been staying for 3 years. So really, really interesting in finding something other like that, and the things that they'll, like, to find some things that they'll eat. So I never.
How big was that gator?
The one gator that we saw, the one that he got before he died, he was about 6.5 foot long. And
a good sized gator. What kind of predators you got down there that could drag a gator like that off and eat them?
There's not a one, because a gator is strictly just muscle.
Yeah, and, I know. Yeah,
that was what was crazy. In this gator track here that I've got, like I said, and with the tail, it wasn't just me. There you got the drag marks there and everything, and then all of a sudden, like I said, then the gator track just disappears. There's no water within a good 100 yards, so he's going to leave tracks somewhere, but all of a sudden he just disappears. So I'm sure that the Bigfoot has eaten the gator again, and hopefully I'll go down there again and maybe get to find his skeleton. I found we found when we first found this area over 50 turtle shells almost stacked up. All the meat had been sucked out, not a single shell had been broken. It was still together. And then we found probably 200 to 300 crawfish shells, the big, what they have called red blood punctures around here. The shells are kind of red and brown, laying on the ground like broken Christmas ornaments. So we knew we were kind of where his kitchen was. And so when we started looking around there at the kitchen there, that's how we found the alligator skeleton. So we'll find big wads of grass taken out of this lake and thrown onto the road. And it looks like something has gone through it looking for foodstuffs. So I'm sure that tends almost like using it like a net. So I'm sure that Bigfoot that's one of his way of securing food is by doing that down there. So it's really, really interesting. We have a lot of hogs. I found 5 razorback skeletons. A razorback's probably the baddest animal in the woods. I'm more afraid of a razorback than I am a bear, and also a Bigfoot. But I found 5 razorback skeletons laid almost side to side back there. According to my forensics, there was no bullet holes, nothing else like that. Something had just killed that thing and was stacking them up right there. So I think people say, well, the Arkansas Sasquatch, the one, the Fouke monster originally reached through and tried to attack those people. They said, wonder why it's so mean. I think it's because everything they eat around here is wanting to hurt them too. They're not going to come out of it unscathed. So I think that probably lends a little credence to the fact of why these things kind of have a little bit of attitude around here.
Yep. Yeah, it just makes sense that they're going to adapt to whatever their local environment is like, and whatever traits they need to have, they're going to tend to naturally select for those. I mean, like up here, all the animals are huge. All the herbivores are huge. So the Bigfoot tend to be huge. They're it's just, in other parts of the country, like, down there by where Caveman is, you see a lot of the reports. They're between 6 and 8 feet, and they're kind of skinnier.
Right.
They don't need to be that gigantic. It helps to actually be a little bit smaller.
And probably more, maybe not necessarily faster, but certainly quicker being smaller. I've seen 2 over 9 foot tall that we've actually taken a meter stick after we had seen them the next day and took it up and measured what we had. And one of them appeared to be about 9'6", and the other one was about 9 foot tall. Most of them, as you said, have been 7.5 to 8.5 foot tall. The first one I saw, I didn't even know, it was probably 7.5 to 8 foot. I had nothing to compare it to except the old wrestler, Andre the Giant. I had seen him as a kid whenever I would go to the wrestling matches, and the size was comparable, except Andre was only 5'40", and this thing was so much bigger than what he was, and I just couldn't hardly comprehend it. And that was the only thing I could compare it to. But I've actually seen one that one of those 9-footers, you could actually see shoulders on each side of a giant pine tree. I mean, he was just a monster. And he had quite an attitude. He had charged at us several times, and he'd do that huffing that they do and also stomping at us. But had he really wanted us, he could have come and got us. But I had my niece with me. I tend to find that a lot of the encounters that I have really get intensified when I have a female along with me. But it hasn't been except for one when that I had my wife and my son on Easter Sunday 2014, where the creature actually became more aggressive. And so for that, I'm thankful. Like I said, I'm maybe playing on house money, but I'm so far it's I'm doing pretty well. And you see them, and they'll sit there and look at you, and then they just kind of disappear or back up right into the shrubbery, and then they just disappear, and you're like, where did he go? And that's what's scary because you don't hear him walk away, you know. So it's really, really neat in that right there to see how smart they are, to see that they they can outsmart you, they can interact you. I had one at one time there that I thought I was trying to follow, and next thing I know, I hear a sound behind me about 50 or 60 yards, and somehow he circled back and never even knew that he was there, or that he had circled back. I actually was trying to head towards where I thought his lair was, and so he had done tricked me and gone back the other way. So all you could do was just laugh. My son and I have been down there when we've separated, seemed to be a group of three. The front two will start freaking out and acting up, so that you'll put your spotlights on them, or they'll throw rocks at you. And then when you're spending all of your attention on those, then the other one will cross the road or get with them. Then you'll hear them, and then they'll all take off together, you know. And sometimes they'll make a noise almost like, "What idiots?" You know, that wasn't no challenge, but it was really funny to see the intelligence that they have, you know, in doing stuff like, and messing with you.
Yeah, when it comes to strategy and tactics in the woods, they've got the upper hand all over the place. We just kind of suck compared to them. They're so much faster and so much more maneuverable, and you know, they can climb like an ape, they can swim, and they know the whole area like the back of their hand. So yeah, we always come out on the losing end of the stick on that one.
Well, they really do. They're the way they do things. You know, it's as you said, they can swim, they can climb. One of the favorite tactics around here, I call it hiding in plain sight, because the colors, they tend to be darker around here. They'll either be a black or a dark brown. Sometimes they'll have that red tint, but the rusty tint to it. But as a rule, even the black ones will have that brown tint, and they look almost like leaves or something. You know, the way a leaf color will get whenever it starts to die and stuff like that. So. And they have a habit around here of they will sit there and they will hunker down. And as tall as they are, they'll look just like bushes or trees. And then they sit there long enough, and it's almost like they can't, it's like you're playing a waiting game and they can't stand it. And then they'll just bust off running, you know, and then you're thankful it is, because it's so far it's always been with them running the other way. I've got so many encounters of people who have had that happen, and all of a sudden the thing just takes off running, and then only one or two have said that the thing has run towards them. But most of the time it's taken off running the other way. So they tend to be more of a creature that you know, they're more interested in seeing what you are, and once they know what you are, they're going to just kind of slip out of the way. So there's no doubt about that. And like I said, that may be something that all us researchers can be thankful for. But I'm hoping that one day we'll have one in. I don't necessarily want one killed, but I would like to see one in some kind of place in a naturalized compound where we can study him without having to worry about my health or his health, you know. So that's one of those things that's probably the one reason that I do this right here. As you well know, making money off of being a Bigfoot researcher, you spend a whole lot more than you're ever going to make, you know, as far as that goes. But when you get that thrill, the excitement and the adrenaline of when you have that sighting, or he screams at you, and the screams will actually make your clothes vibrate on your body, even though you don't see him. When you get that right there, and I'm not an adrenaline junkie, but like, it's one of those things you're like, yeah, that's why I do this, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, recently we were up there camping, and we had 3 mule deer come walking into camp. One of them came right up by the campfire, walked past it, and started grazing on the other side of the camp. We're like, what the bleep is going on here? And then we look at the thermal. There's 2 other mule deer. They're not like in camp, but they're right up on the embankment next to it. And then beyond that, there's this little river. And this is going on for like 5 or 6 minutes, and all of a sudden we hear this loud mouth pop from across the river. And the deer in camp bolts straight up, ears straight up, looks at the mouth pop that we both heard. We're looking at it, and we're going like, yeah, we know why she's in camp now.
Well, a strange story, like as you're saying there, Mike Woolley. There was a man named Mike Woolley who'd had a sighting very similar, where the deers had come up, the doe had come up and laid at the bottom of its stand. But I had an encounter down there back in 2013. I'd had an auto accident, so I couldn't hunt, but I was just walking through the woods. I was looking for Bigfoot. Deer season was over, and I get to one place and I hear something rustling in the brush. I'm like, oh crap, here we go. So I pulled my 44 out, have a 44 Magnum, and all of a sudden, here comes this doe walking out of this thicket, and she comes, and she gets about 15 feet behind me, never any further, never any closer, and she makes every step I make for about a mile and a half. But the thing is, she's looking over her rump like there's something behind her. So we get to a creek there where I finally couldn't cross, and then she's steadily looking over her behind. I'm like, oh man, this is where it's going to go down, and I'm nervous as a cat, and her tail's kind of flicking a little bit. You know, you can read deer body language. It's kind of flicking like she's a little bit excited. So I knew it was time then to turn around and go back to the truck. So as I said, I'm sitting there. I've got my pistol. I also had a shotgun, a sawed-off shotgun with me, and so I had that shotgun loaded up there and ready to go. And so we start walking back. She stays 15 feet behind. When I stop, she stops. When we get close to the truck, she walks right back into the same thicket she was in when she came out of. I was so thankful that I didn't hear any bleating with a T, bleating, or, you know, hear her crying or anything else like that, because I'm just foolish enough sometimes to think I've got to save that deer rather than just if it would have been a Bigfoot eater. But I didn't hear anything. When I came back a couple of days later with somebody, we didn't find any skeleton or anything else like that. So I'm hoping she's still out there. But it was very uncanny. It made me so nervous because she followed me that whole way and looking over her tail like there's something behind her and like she was coming to me for safety. So it was really just like what you're talking about, the deer that come into camp. There's a reason they do. When you see the other animals acting crazy, that's another clue that there's probably a Bigfoot hanging around somewhere.
Yeah, there was two. Well, before I finish the rest of that story, that, by the way, I didn't tell anywhere else yet. I had somebody else back this up, Rich Soul, who's going to be on the show again here soon. He was out doing the red squatching thing, and they were walking around doing a night patrol, and they could hear something following them. So they hit it with the lights, and it was a deer. And it was the same thing for like half an hour. That deer followed them and stayed within like 20 feet of them. Wouldn't get away from them at all. Wherever they were going, that deer was hugging close to them. And here's the peculiar thing. Now, when we had that one come into camp, after it was there for about 45 minutes or so, we just figured, well, it's just going to stay here, whatever. Michael reminded me that he had lost his laser pointer, and we figured that earlier in the afternoon when we had gone upriver with Team Helena to help him find the fording point across it, he had it in his pocket, and he dropped it somewhere along there. So I went, okay, well, we got a flashlight. That's our side of the river. The mouth poppers are on the other side of the river. Let's just go walk that side of the river and see if we can find it. So we took a flashlight, and we walked up there. We got all the way up to the end where they forded across, and we couldn't find it. We turned around and started coming back. Now, he had the flashlight, so when we turned around, I was behind him. Now I'm in the front, walking into the darkness, and he's behind me. So in front of me is all dark, and there's light on both sides of me because I'm casting the shadow in front. So I probably didn't walk 15 feet, and I walked past this tree. And right on the other side of this tree, on the right-hand side, there's these two huge eyes reflecting the light as soon as Michael comes around the tree. And I just about jumped out of my shoes, and it's that same deer. She followed us all the way out there, and she followed us all the way back again. She stayed like 5 feet off the trail. She must have been right behind us the whole time we were walking out.
And truly, and that scared me more than if I would have seen a Bigfoot, knowing what could have happened. My mind is steadily racing, as it will. Whenever you're out there in the woods by yourself, and as I said, I had been injured in an auto accident. I didn't have two good arms. I just had one arm, and had the pistol and the one arm to carry the shotgun. So it's really, when you see things like that. As I said, dogs, I've seen dogs act the same way. Dogs that are normally aggressive or that will take off the woods, come back and stay right there at your feet and will not go into the woods. And dogs that aren't scared of anything. And so when, again, like I said, with that right there, and generally it doesn't end good for the dog. I do have some Bigfoot stories where the dog and the Bigfoot have actually gotten along, and for that right there. But I've had one that actually, when I had my pit bull with me, I went to go cast a track that my friend Randy Crawford and I had found the day before, and he was up on top of this hill. And as soon as we got out, he screamed, and she was kind of cowering down, but she was also wanting to go fight. And I wanted to go cast a track because it had toes, but it was really hot, and I wanted to get there before it dried out. So anyway, it was maybe not 50 yards down the trail, so I had 3 guns with me. So I went on down there with the equipment. The whole time he's sitting there hollering, and my dog is nervous as a cat. And so when I get down there, it's not got enough depth to it anymore to cast. So as I go back to the truck, I had my dog on a leash. Well, usually she'll wait for me to walk around and put her in on the pasture side. I opened my side, and when I did, she jerked the leash from my hand and jumped across my seat and across my console, jumped in her seat and lay down and cowered. And like I said, she's a black pit bull. She's not afraid of anything. So when you see those animals acting different like that, that's enough to, and he was, like I said, he screamed the whole time. That was enough for me because that was unnerving. But I was very, very uneasy, and I haven't carried my dogs back with me since. I might feel more secure, but I know what could happen. I have a good friend down here that lost a dog this year to a Bigfoot, and that dog's about 140 pounds and bred for fighting, and that dog is no longer just for that right there. So like I said, when those animals start telling you something different, besides your sixth sense, then you probably need to start listening, because they've got those senses that we don't that we don't necessarily have.
Yeah. Well, in this case with the deer that clung to camp all night long, and her and both of her Confederates who wouldn't come right into the campfire and wouldn't hang out right next to us. When I got up in the morning, all 3 of them were actually there laying on the side of the embankment right next to the camp, and they got up and took off as soon as I got up. But all night long they were staying there. And other than the mouth pop that we heard from across the river, at one point she tried to go up over the embankment across the road, and she went up there for like maybe 10 minutes, and then she came walking back into camp again. And shortly after that, she alerted to something across the road that I didn't hear. And then about 2-3 minutes, she alerted to something that me and Michael both heard coming from across the road. And I got up and I walked literally within like 6 feet of her. Walked up onto the road and went, "Hey, knock it off, you guys. She got to safety here. She's okay. Leave her alone." And I walked back like within 5 feet of her, right back into camp again. And she, we're like pulling brush away from the brush pile. She's on one side of it. I'm on the other side of it. Brush pile's like 4 feet wide. No reaction whatsoever. I'm snapping the brush, throwing it in the campfire. No reaction. She hears this teeny noise from across the road or from across the river. Boom, bolt upright, ears straining. Hey, you know for sure why she's there. There's a predator on her butt. And the other thing is, you can say, well, maybe she was habituated. Maybe she's used to, maybe people give her handouts and stuff like that all the time. And that's certainly possible. But, add this other factor to it. This is hunting season. We saw guys in camo coveralls with bows on the other side of the valley earlier that morning, deer hunting. So how likely is a wild deer to come wandering into camp during hunting season?
I've been deer hunting all my life. I have watched deer have a four-wheeler ride by, watch them lay down right in the middle of the field, and let that four-wheeler go by and stand right back up. They know that whenever we're hunting, they know when we have different equipment and things like that. So like you said, to have that right there for them to sit there, there's something strange going on, and that's something you need to pay attention to.
I'm not saying it was a Bigfoot, but there was some kind of predator that was on, and that was, 3 full-grown female mule deer, good-sized critters. And again, that's the thing up here one of the reasons the Squatch get big is because look at what they have to take down. You got an elk, that's 1,200 pounds. That ain't no 150-pound white-tailed deer. You got to be a big boy to be eating food like that.
I've actually seen them where horses react in a certain way. We were down there one day, and where the one had gotten there for my wife and my son and I, and these guys come riding up on horses, or they actually come up with the horses in the trailer, and they put the saddles on them. They come down there to where we are, and we had a Bigfoot scream at us about 2 nights before, so that was the reason we were there. We're right there where that Bigfoot screamed at us. The guys rode the horses, and man, their horses started just freaking out, and the guys cousin, he's like, "I don't know what's wrong with this blankety blank horse." He said, I told him, I said, we heard, I kind of lied to him, and I didn't want to, but I didn't want him because he was armed. And I said, we kind of had a bear scream at us the other night. He goes, this horse has seen bear all the time. This is one I take with me to Colorado, go elk hunt. It sees bears all the time. I said, I've never seen it act like this. Well, finally, the third person from their group came riding up, and the same things happened. He goes, man, this is my daughter's horse. This is the most gentle horse there is. And that horse was rearing up. It was shuffling, walking backwards. So they know when there's something out there. Like I said, this was not a bear. And it was actually a Bigfoot that had screamed at us, and it was so loud. So we knew, but like I said, but the horses knew when they got there that was either his trail or he was close by. So their activity was very strange. And when we went back to the vehicle, I'd left my son there, and I said, what's going on back here with the horse trailer? He said, they've been throwing rocks ever since they left. So the bed of the horse trailer was covered in rocks, probably probably the size of golf balls. It's very strange. I just left this weekend the Honolulu, Oklahoma Bigfoot conference, and we were up there in the Kiamichi Mountains with some good friends of mine, Mary Boland, who who is one of the finest researchers I've ever seen.
Texas Bigfoot Rangers.
Yes, sir, and a guy named Michael Waldy, and then we had some other guys that I had been for with the Southern Bigfoot Alliance. That came up later on. So we had about 5 or 6 people there, but Thursday night when we were there, we were all sitting outside. We had a FLIR hooked up to a big TV, and we have a guy with us named Paul Ragsdale, and Paul's boy just as solid as a rock, good researcher. So we're sitting there watching this, and all of a sudden we start hearing rocks hitting the top metal roof of this cabin. Well, there was a big white oak tree, and everybody's like, well, that's white oak acorns. Well, man, we get several there that are not white oak acorns. I told them, I said, those are rocks. We're sitting there having these Bigfoot watch us and throw rocks. The next day, we find 13 rocks on top of the cabin. So we get all the rocks cleaned off. The next night we go in there, and we're sitting there, and I got up twice. And so I went up and I turned on the light on my phone and walked in front of the door that we had closed there so they could see the light, and I waved the light back and forth from my phone. And then went and got back in bed. Within 30 seconds, the rocks lit right there by where I had waved my phone with the light. So sure enough, the next morning, we only found one, but these were being thrown with such velocity that they were actually going over the cabin. As luck would have it, we went out and looked around, and sure enough, we find 5 good prints and possibly 7 tracks that we had over there. We had one up there that was by my truck that was parked on that little knoll. Like I said, he was actually knocking on a tree, and then something came by my window at 4:21. I remember it perfectly because I looked at my phone and my watch. It was and I wasn't there going to look out that window. It was almost that little moan that we've heard him do. And I wasn't there going to look out that window. I grabbed my pistol just in case they stepped up on that porch. And I wasn't going to shoot him unless he decided he's going to walk back through. But the call was distinctly a simian type call there. And so it was really, it was really strange. But then the way they had done those rocks, I mean, it was almost like they were saying, hey, we're not happy with you being here in our territory. So really, really one of those things that I'll remember. We had a great conference, but the whole group that was sitting there can tell you, that what we're saying is true. It was just unreal to have those things in there interacting like that and not appreciating our presence. We didn't see any other animals. Now we saw some on the FLIR that were way over there, but close to our cabin, they just weren't there. So that was kind of uneasy too, because usually you'll see even some possums or armadillos. There was nothing close by our trailer. So
yeah.
So
possums or armadillos, that's Bigfoot trail mix. So of course there's
yeah.
That might not be nearby. Hey, I gotta ask. Yeah, possum on the go. Possum pot pie. Now I got a question for you. Here we showed everybody the cool pictures of that remains of the alligator that got nabbed. Right. We got some other interesting things to show them here too. Tell us about the baseball bat.
The baseball bat was a place that my son had gone to, and we had been getting activity there for about almost 2 months there, solid, just about every night we went. And so one night he went down there and he had to come right after work. So he had some Slim Jims with him, those little pocket Slim Jims. So he decided that he was going to leave those Slim Jims there was a hollow in this tree, so he was going to leave it as part of a gift to try to get the thing to come in as a gift. So anyway, we start doing that, and sure enough, they start disappearing, and then they end up leaving us like little things like red plastic Solo cups and things like that. So as we were down there knocking one night, he broke the handle on his ball bat, and he said, well, shoot, I'm just going to just gift them this thing. So he takes the ball bat and he puts it behind the tree there where nobody will see it, and he puts it with the barrel on the ground and the handle up on the tree, puts a few pairs right there also to bring it in, and then he puts a pork chop, what he had left of a pork chop, in the stump. Well, I come back the next day, the ball bat's gone, the pork chop is gone, the pears are gone. So I called him. I said, we've had a visitor. We need to come check this out. I can't find it. So we go back, and together we start looking, in about probably 40 to 45 feet away. We find the baseball bat. The baseball bat, this time the handle is on the ground and the trunk is up against the tree, and it's in a tree that's very much smaller than the one we placed it in. The first one we placed it there so nobody would see it. Well, he had just placed it, but he had placed it in the same way. And also, it had left us a piece of sharpened bone, whether it was the same off the pork chop, I'm not sure, but it was sharp enough that it was almost like a razor. But he had taken that and he had bitten into this ball bat, almost like, they say that the lacquer on some of these ball bats tastes somewhat like an ant hill or some kind of insects that they chew on. So there's, as you can see on there, there's 6 or 7 places that are teeth marks that have been where the thing has bit into it. And the way I know, because I said my son is a dentist, and we had done the same thing with a tub of sardines. We left the tub unpopped. We put it up there, and he pulled it down and bit into the sardine can while it's very, very hard aluminum, bit into that, left his teeth marks there. And then something I'll be sharing with you, hopefully one of these next few times that we get to speak, is that I put my game camera out on a brush pile, me and my friend Steven, and came back and we kept noticing it being moved. So finally we take it in, and I can't figure out what the pictures are. So I go in there and I go in the bathroom, I get my wife's iPad, and she loads it up for me and everything. And I take the pictures in the dark of what we have right there. Then I go back and she puts them on the camera for me. Well, she goes on. Well, as I come back and I open the camera, the first thing I find, I've got a picture of a Bigfoot biting my camera. I've got the teeth, from the very front. You can see the front teeth. You can see his nose is mashed up against the lens, and you can see where he has what's called the primate space right there between the space that comes right before he has a canine teeth. His teeth are like ours for the first 4, but the other, there's what's called the primate space. And then there's a canine tooth. And so I have that, and like I said, and pretty soon, hopefully, I'm going to be able to get to where I can release that and show you. It's really, really interesting. And by that, I think the fact that is that it shows that Bigfoot, at least around here, and this type of Bigfoot is some kind of ape. So that's really, really neat to have those deals to compare. And like I said, that's it. When I saw it, it shook me to no end. And then I also have another picture there where it's being filtered up, hopefully being filtered up right now anyway, but where we have the camera's inside the Bigfoot's mouth, and you can look out and see. And there's another one beside it, and you can actually see the silhouette, and then another one you can see the eye. So these things, evidently the plastic, if you saw the episode of Monster Quest where the Bigfoot tore up the cabin, and then they said it maybe smelled like ants, and it was chewing up everything that had the plastic hard shell, or like a bear does to a game camera. Yeah. Evidently, it has
insulation inside of it. Smells like formic acid. Like that.
That's what it is. Exactly right. And so it's been really neat to have that. And as I said, hopefully I will get to share that with you the next time that we have a show, if I'm lucky enough to be able to come back, because I think everybody will find that's very interesting. I've showed it to everybody I've showed it to, and it just blows their mind. But as you know, right now, I've got some things there that I can't quite bring it out just yet. But when I do, it's going to be really neat.
Can you tell the audience why you can't share the pictures yet?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, and I'm not trying to be a stinker in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's just that I have some people that I have been working with here, and they have contracted us to a possible television show. And in that line right there, I have the things that I have to have put those underneath there so that they can represent me to the best way, but also represent the creature They know how to. They're very, very educated. They're very, very smart. Very, very good cameramen. They have a lot of interesting angles and stuff like that. So if we can get that thing put together, then we're going to break it out in that format. I've also got a picture of a face from 3 foot away. That he's sitting there, and we doped him into coming in. We put out a dummy camera, and then we put out the camera that was taking the picture. And he was worried about the dummy camera, and the one that was actually taking the picture kind of got him by surprise. So we've got a picture of a Bigfoot face from 3 foot away, and you can see him. You can see his arm, you can see the hair, and he's actually got one of our baits in his hand. So it's been really, really a successful place that we've got. But those pictures, as I said, have been right now. I'm under contract with them. And I hope that something will come of it soon. But either way, I will be out from underneath that contract and be able to share what I have with everybody. And as I said, I'll take a polygraph in front of anybody on TV to prove that they're real, that they're not doctored. And it's one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen. And I've got a man here that's helping me to get some of them filtered up. The ones that didn't come out. The game camera I have was not a real high class game camera, but at nighttime, it tends to shoot in black and white. In the daytime, it shoots in color, but it was right between that twilight time. I also have a picture of a mother, as I said, a mother walking with a baby Bigfoot on her shoulder, and you can see the little cone head on the baby Bigfoot. And so I'm going to hopefully get to share that with everybody too. So it's really something that I'm excited about. Like I said, my partner, Stephen Hill, he's been there with me, and when you have good partners like that, it makes it a whole lot easier to do these things. He's very, very smart, very cerebral. Does a lot of reading, thinks things through, talks to a lot of people, attends the Bigfoot conferences. There's a lot of great researchers out there. You yourself are one, and you know that, and you can learn more every time. But this is something that we just lucked out. The place that we were was a place that back in 2009. My son was out of college, and he was preaching at a little church. So it was late on Sunday evening, probably about 8:30, and we were driving past this place. I saw something walking down the side of the road. It was kind of dirty and brown, and I thought, there's a daggum hitchhiker. He's going to try to stop. Well, buddy, it wasn't no hitchhiker. He turned around.
I've heard that one quite a few times, brother.
Yes,
That's why I started laughing.
I freaked out. I told my son, I said, that was a Bigfoot. And I slammed on the brakes, and he ran behind me. I could see him running behind me on my brake lights, and he goes into this wooded area. Well, coincidentally, my partner, Stephen, who owns a log trucking company and also a log cutting company, he had to pull a crew out of this same area one time as he was cutting through these woods because he was getting some noises. He thought some people were out there. He didn't want to take a chance on somebody getting hurt by some of the fallen trees and things like that. So when he and I put our heads together, we found one big tree, just like you're talking about, where the trees that are in there that don't belong. Here in Texarkana, a lot of them are cypress trees that have been picked up and leaned against oak trees. Well, this right here was 2 big giant pine trees, but one of them has been totally skinned, just like what you've talked about. All this stuff is gone. And when I saw that, I knew right then. I told Stephen, I said, this is it. So I think it was December the 23rd, and we went through there, and we got up on video. We've got a mama and 2 babies walking across this field, and we get them on there for probably 20 minutes of actual time, but we kind of edited through there. But I decided to make a couple of whoop calls. And when I did, she looked over at us, and her eyes changed from a whitish yellow to a green to an orange, and she is not happy. And I've never seen that happen before. I've seen Bigfoot eye shine many times, but I've never seen that happen. Well, then later on, the babies, she's got 2 babies over there, they start messing around. And she does the same thing again, and the eyes change color. And like I said, neither one of those times did I have the spotlight on her. Both of those were done for the auto illumination, almost like a firefly does or whatever. But it was enough to scare the heck out of you. But we also have that on my buddy's I guess you call it a YouTube channel or something like that. It's called Russ 16, and you can get on there and look and see, but you can see the mama. But we found the next day he comes back, and I asked him, did you go back and check the tracks? He goes, I forgot. He goes in there, he finds the 4-toed tracks of the mama, which is just huge, and then finds 2 of the baby tracks right there next to her. And so that's how we kind of got into that area right there. So it's really, really neat. That's something that's on right now on his channel, Russ 16, and you can see the actual the actual mama and the babies there, and I filtered it up. I have some different filters on my phone there. I have a yellow filter and a blue filter. It kind of helps filter things up, and whenever you put them on there, you can actually see the shape of mama's head, the big cone, dome-shaped head that she has. So we found, like I said, we found so many tracks there. I found one about 4 months ago that's about 3 inches long, and it has to be a newborn. And I've got it's a 3-toed track, and I've got that thing actually casted, and I've got pictures of it as well. I think Mary sent that to you, and you can see that juvenile track. So that's actually the smallest track that I've ever found. We have got a bunch of 4-inch tracks, but those animals up there, the rumor down here in Fouke is that they're 3-toed. Most of the ones I found in Fouke are 5-toed, but the ones I'm finding up at the bases of the Ouachita Mountains, they're 3-toed and 4-toed tracks. So I'm just, like I said, having to relearn everything I've ever learned in 40 years of Bigfooting, because I'm finding something that I didn't really, possibly a different species or something like that. But it's really been interesting, and hopefully I can share more with you later on as we do these shows here, because it's one of the coolest things that I've ever seen, and like I said, it was something that I'm not going to sit there. I know I'm not going to change anybody's mind, and I know people are sitting there saying bull crap, but like I said, I've got it on. I've got 8x10s taken of it. We've got the video on Steven's YouTube channel there, and I've got the 8x10s, and like I said, they've got pictures of the 8x10s that if we get to put out the show. So it'll be something that's really, really neat. I've got about 6 different creatures there that you can see. I've got one that looks kind of like a dog man, and I know that sounds stupid. It's either he has a snout, and that's why I say he's like a dog man, but his fingernails are about, a half inch longer than what the end of his fingers are, and they're kind of pointed, very, very pointed. And so we've got a picture of him, and it's the very same place that we've gotten these other pictures.
So he doesn't have the tall ears like a dog man. He's got the ears on the side of his head, and his snout's a little bit shorter.
Yeah. His snout's a little bit shorter that we can see. But I mean,
so make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puckwudgie. And for God's sake, whatever you do not hug the Wookiee. See you later, folks.